Hey guys, Matt here, and in this video we're going to go through every single game that was released in 2025 that you could use to learn Japanese with, and I mean everything. I've searched through thousands of games released. I've gone through the entire Steam store, the entire Nintendo Switch store, the entire PlayStation store, researching every single game to find exactly which features are available for which game, what games are pushed to continue, what games have pausable cutscenes, what games have furigana, voice acting, and logs, so that you can know exactly what are the best games released in 2025 to help you enjoy learning Japanese with. This video took an enormous amount of effort to make, so if you like this video, please make sure to leave a like, comment, and subscribe. And if you want to help me make more videos like this, then consider joining as a member, either through Patreon or directly through the GameGengo website. Not only can you help support the channel and help me keep making videos, but you can also get help with your Japanese any time of the day. You can ask questions, get help. You can hang out and chat with a really chill community about all things Japan, Japanese video games, learning Japanese. People sometimes even stream their gameplay, and sometimes I'm even in voice chat and you can hang out and chat directly with me. Now before we get started, I just want to give a quick warning. I live in Japan. Every game I'm talking about here is the Japanese version of the game. So whether or not your region in particular has the Japanese language options, you need to check that yourself, as I can't go through every single country in the world and tell you which countries have Japanese available. So make sure that your region has Japanese available before going out and buying any games. Steam usually tells you the language options on the side, and it's usually relatively accurate. And I believe with the Nintendo Switch and the PS5, you can actually switch your system into Japanese, and then you'll be able to have Japanese language available. But in some situations, you may need a Japanese account and actually buy the game from the Japanese store. Another pretty reliable way to make sure the game you want has Japanese language available is to buy the Japanese copy of the game, which you can actually do from the Japanese version of Amazon. Just search the game name and buy it from the Japanese store. So if you're not 100% sure whether your region has the Japanese language, buying the Japanese version over at Amazon is definitely the easiest way. You just have to wait for it to arrive. Also, this channel actually has an affiliate link with Amazon, which you can actually support the channel with anytime you buy something on Amazon. Just click on our link first, and anything you buy, a tiny bit like 1 or 2% gets sent to the channel without any extra cost. Affiliate links in the description. Okay, so this list is aimed to help absolutely any Japanese language learner, whether you're a beginner, someone at an intermediate level, or even advanced learners. And I'm going to go through all the games and let you know what features each game has, with the games that have more features to help you access the language getting a higher score. I will also try and rank the games that are easier a little bit higher as well. I'll try and keep in mind the difficulty, but I will mention as we go through each game whether some games are really good for beginners or whether some games are a bit more difficult. And so just before we get started, I just want to briefly go through the grading criteria for this video. Right here on the screen, D tier means that it is difficult to use for a Japanese language learner. Difficult to access the language, not really something you can use unless you really love it. C tier are games that are passable. Generally, the prerequisite for this tier is that it's pushed to continue at the bare minimum. It must be accessible. B tier are games that are accessible but also have some nice bonuses. Maybe they have just a little bit extra here and there, like a little bit of voice acting or a little bit of furigana. A tier are games that are great for learners. Either really great games that are missing just a few things, or games that are close to perfect. Generally, these all have push to continue, furigana, voice acting, things like that, but they're just missing some things to become perfect. And S tier means they are absolutely perfect for Japanese language learners, push to continue, furigana, voice acting. And if a game wants to be God tier with an S+, it would have a log as well. Absolutely everything. I will also link in the video description the spreadsheet that I used to make this video, so all of the details you can go through, take your own time and find which games have which features. And I'll also be adding these games to the big complete GameGengo tier list of all of the games that I've covered on the channel from previous tier lists and videos. And just keep in mind that even if a game has a lower tier score than you may think, that doesn't necessarily mean it's a bad game for learning Japanese with, it just means it has less features. You may absolutely love a game that's in the C tier and think it's way better for learning than something in the S tier. That's totally legitimate. Like for example, I love Final Fantasy VII or Final Fantasy VIII. They would be kind of C tier games. They're passable. They have push to continue. So just keep that in mind as we go through the top 100 games for learning Japanese with, released in 2025. Okay, so starting off, before we get to the top 100, here we have all of the D tier games released in 2025. These are games that are difficult to use for a Japanese language learner. This being mostly because these games don't have push to continue, you can't pause the cutscenes, but they may still have some beneficial use for Japanese language learners like voice acting. So very quickly, these games unfortunately get a D score. Opus Prism Peak. Oh, that game looks so good. It has voice acting but nothing else. Lost Soul aside, this has a tiny amount of push to continue. pausable cutscenes and voice acting, but it's a D tier. Daemon X Machina Titanic Scion, Age of Mythology, that also has Japanese voice acting. Assassin's Creed Shadows has Japanese voice acting but not pushed to continue. Borderlands 4 has Japanese voice acting. Call of Duty Black Ops 7 has Japanese voice acting. Days Gone Remastered has Japanese voice acting. Doki Doki no Shunkan has Japanese voice acting. Doom: The Dark Ages, Double Dragon Revive, Dying Light: The Beast, Fatal Fury City of the Wolves Special Edition, Forza Horizon 5 has Japanese voice acting. Full Metal Schoolgirl, Ghost of Yorte, Jurassic World Evolution 3, Kingdom Come Deliverance 2, unfortunately, has Japanese voice acting, but that's it. You can't take it at your own pace, you can't push to continue, you can't pause. It's real unfortunate. That game is so good for Japanese immersion, so much voice acting. Unfortunately, not that useful for learners though, unless you just want to listen to Japanese. Legacy of Kain Soul Reaver 1 and 2 has Japanese voice acting. Marvel Spider-Man 2 has Japanese voice acting, but you can't take it at your own pace. Mecha Break, Mobile Suit Gundam Sea Battle Destiny Remastered, Monster Hunter Wilds, Ninja Gaiden 4 and Ninja Gaiden 2 Black, Silent Hill F, although I'm not sure if you can pause the cutscenes or not, so you might be able to, but it's not pushed to continue. Split Fiction, Steam Hearts Saturn Tribute, Sinduality Echo of Ada, The First Berserker Kazan, Wallace and Gromit The Grand Getaway. This game is a VR game that actually has Japanese voice acting and text. Wu Chang Fallen Feathers, Zako no Ahiru, Izon, Junji Ito's Maniac, An Infinite Jail, that game has Japanese voice acting. Nico Deriko, The Magical World, oh my god, I wish this game was better for Japanese learners. It has Japanese voice acting, and it looks really accessible, but unfortunately it's not pushed to continue, and this game looks so good for Japanese language learners, because it's like Donkey Kong, but with voice acting, and a little bit more story. And it even has the soundtrack done by David Wise, who did the soundtrack for the original Donkey Kong Country series. But unfortunately, it's not pushed to continue, so it's just going to be immersion, not really something you can use for learning. Onimusha 1 and 2, Japanese voice acting. SpongeBob Titans of the Tide has Japanese voice acting. Stellar Blade has Japanese voice acting, but unfortunately no push to continue or pausable cutscenes. Super Muscle Cat, all of those games have Japanese voice acting, but they're just not very accessible for Japanese language learners. Most of them you're not able to pause, or if you can pause, you can't see the text. Some of them I haven't been able to verify, but they're still very difficult for learning Japanese with. And then for games that have Japanese text but no push to continue, no pausing, and no voice acting, we have Manjaraga Whispers of the Witch Tree, Marvel Comic Invasion, The Elder Scrolls 4 Oblivion, and Mafia: The Old Country. Okay, so with that out of the way, let's get started with the top 100 games for learning Japanese with. Number 100, Clair Obscur, Expedition 33. This game's a really tricky one to rank. I actually previously had it a little bit higher, but I've had to re-record this because I'm just not too sure. The game does have Japanese text, and there are some parts of the game that are pushed to continue. So for those sections of the game, you can use this game to help you with your Japanese studies. But then there are a lot of sections that are cutscenes, and unfortunately you can't pause those cutscenes, making them completely inaccessible. So this is a really tricky one to rank because push to continue is a prerequisite for C. This game doesn't have full push to continue, so this game's a really tricky one to rank. Kind of feels like half the game is usable and the other half isn't. One potential benefit you could see with this game is because a lot of it is English voice acted, you could use this as kind of an entry game, where you can comfortably play the game with English voice acting, but then for the push to continue parts, you can just try your best reading the Japanese, but still understand the context thanks to the English voice acting. So this game is definitely a D or a C- tier game. Number 99, Freedom Wars Remastered. Freedom Wars Remastered has push to continue sometimes, voice acting, but unfortunately you cannot pause the cutscenes, meaning that there's parts of this game that you just cannot use, and so you just kind of have to skip over. So it does kind of lower the overall learning experience. There are some sections though that are pushed to continue with voice acting, making that part really good, but then with the parts that you can't take at your own pace, unfortunately lower the score. So Freedom Wars Remastered gets a C-. Number 98, Bleach, Rebirth of Souls. Oh man, this game, I wish I could give this a higher score because it looks so awesome for Japanese language learners. You have like the whole story of Bleach retold with voice acting. It's pretty much a movie, and unfortunately that's why it gets a C-. This game does not have any push to continue whatsoever. It's full of Japanese voice acting, so really good for learners for that. But unfortunately, you cannot pause the cutscenes, or you can, but the text isn't visible. And that's a huge hit for this game for Japanese language learners, unfortunately making it quite difficult. But on the flip side, you can actually replay the scenes. So you can go through each scene and just replay it over and over and over again, making it usable for Japanese language learners, but unfortunately I have to give it a C-. It also has some furigana on some high-level words, so it's just so close to being a really good game, but unfortunately because you can't take anything at your own pace, it makes it quite a difficult game for learning Japanese with, but I don't think it deserves to be a D tier, so I've given it a C-. Number 97, Like a Dragon, Pirates in Hawaii. This is another unfortunate game that should be really good for Japanese language learners, but unfortunately it's not as good as its other games in the series. Pirates in Hawaii has Japanese voice acting, which is great, but those voice acted parts are normally not pushed to continue and you can't pause the cutscenes, making it pretty much useless, other than Japanese listening practice. There are push to continue sections in the game though, but for the most part those aren't voice acted. Actually, I didn't really see any that were voice acted. So those sections would be a C tier, but unfortunately, as there are parts of the game that you just can't take at your own pace, it gets a C-. Number 96, Indiana Jones and the Great Circle. Oh, what a pretty game this is. So Indiana Jones and the Great Circle has full Japanese voice acting, and you can pause the cutscenes. There isn't unfortunately any push to continue sections in the game as it kind of plays out like a movie, but you can take all the dialogue that appears during the game at your own pace just by pressing the pause button. The text is still visible. I checked this personally. So Indiana Jones and the Great Circle could be an interesting game if you want to learn Japanese with, as long as you're okay pressing the pause button with each line, giving it a C-. Number 95, Death Stranding 2, On the Beach. So here's another one of those games that has Japanese voice acting, but unfortunately no push to continue. So Death Stranding 2 has the same issues with Indiana Jones. You can't really take it at your own pace. However, you can pause the cutscenes and the text is still visible, and they even show you like a progress bar to show you how much of the cutscene you've actually seen. It would be great if you could also replay the scene, but you can't. So unfortunately, Death Stranding 2 gets a C-. Number 94, Hunter x Hunter, Nen X Impact. So now we're moving on to the C tier games. Hunter x Hunter has full push to continue, but unfortunately no Japanese voice acting whatsoever. It does have a log, but as there's no Japanese voice acting, it doesn't really matter. So this is a base standard C tier game. It has Japanese text so you can take it at your own pace, but that's it. Number 93, Sid Meier's Civilization 7. So another passing score here for Civilization 7. This game does have push to continue, but not really any Japanese voice acting. There might be a tiny bit in these little interactions, but not really enough to learn with. So Civ 7 gets a C. Number 92, Hollow's Hanafuda. So next up we have a card game that appears to be with some VTubers. I don't watch any VTubers, so I'm not sure, but they certainly look like VTubers, and I'm pretty sure one of those characters was one of the famous ones, the dog one. Hollow's Hanafuda has push to continue, and it has a log, but unfortunately there's no Japanese voice acting, so the log is kind of useless. But there is some story that happens as you play the game, so you get a little bit of card play and then a little bit of story. So Hollow's Hanafuda gets a passing score, a C. Number 91, Shadow Labyrinth. So the next game, Shadow Labyrinth, is kind of a 2D action platformer that's kind of reminiscent of Castlevania. However, you have Pac-Man along with you for the ride. Shadow Labyrinth has Japanese text with push to continue, but no voice acting or anything like that. This is definitely a game if you're wanting kind of a light learning experience but heavy gameplay. There is a story that you can go along with as you play, but it's not too overbearing, so this is probably a pretty light game if you want to play in Japanese. Number 90, Front Mission Remake Trilogy. So the Front Mission Remake Trilogy has Japanese text and push to continue. No voice acting or anything else, but you can completely take it at your own pace, giving it a C. These games are really cool kind of mech strategy games that come from the Super Nintendo era. There's actually quite a lot of story and text as well, making it a pretty decent reading experience. This has a really nice balance, I think, of Japanese text and gameplay. Definitely more than the previous Shadow Labyrinth, which is a bit more gameplay. This is a little bit closer to an RPG in terms of how much dialogue there is. Number 89, The Rogue Prince of Persia. Here we have another 2D action platformer. This one's a bit more roguelike. Kind of funny. The Rogue Prince of Persia does actually have Japanese text and push to continue. And there's actually quite a bit of text. I had a look at some Let's Plays on YouTube going through like many hours of gameplay, and there's actually quite a lot of pieces of dialogue throughout the whole experience. So this is definitely a good game if you want a little bit more dialogue than something like Shadow Labyrinth would have, but you still want a bit more of an action 2D platform. The Rogue Prince of Persia gets a C. Number 88, Ender Magnolia. Bloom in the Mist. Ender Magnolia is another great 2D action side-scroller that has Japanese text and push to continue, with quite a bit of story and dialogue as you progress through the game. Another really cool game if you want a bit more of a balance between action and learning. I will say, however, that the font is a little bit difficult. It's not completely difficult, but it is a little bit funky. So just keep that in mind. It might be a little bit challenging for learners, especially if you compare to something like the Rogue Prince of Persia with a much more readable text. Number 87, Once Again. Once Again is a really cool indie adventure game that is quite light for Japanese language learners. If you just want a little bit of reading in very approachable small doses, this could be a really interesting game for Japanese language learners. It has Japanese text and push to continue. Also, there is a demo version available on Steam, so you can try it out yourself right now. So Once Again gets a passing score of C. Number 86, Homura Hime. So this next game hasn't actually been released yet, but there is a demo that was released in 2025, with the release date being to be announced. So technically not a release this year, but as the demo is available, I'll include it in the list. Homura Hime has push to continue, although there are parts where text appears that you can't take at your own pace. It does have voice acting sometimes too, in those push to continue moments, which is great, but it's very front-loaded, kind of later on the voice acting kind of goes away. And unfortunately, there's no log, no pausable cutscenes or anything like that. So there are moments where there'll be text on the screen and you just can't take that at your own pace. So with the positives and the negatives, I think kind of balancing it out, Homura Hime gets a C. Number 85, Yu-Gi-Oh! Early Days Collection. Oh man, these games are awesome. Well, if you like Yu-Gi-Oh! At least. I remember playing these games as a kid, both on the Game Boy and the Game Boy Color, Game Boy Advance, and so these are the remakes of those, or not really remakes, just re-releases of those games. Great to actually be able to finally play these games on an actual platform, which doesn't involve any sailing of the seas. So the Yu-Gi-Oh! Early Days collection has push to continue and Japanese text. This one's an interesting one. The earlier games on Game Boy are mostly written only in hiragana, which might be good or bad depending on your tastes, but it also has Game Boy font, which mostly is a negative. The later games on the Game Boy Advance do actually have kanji and much more readable text. But it's all push to continue, fun Yu-Gi-Oh! Games, and there's like 20 games or something in there. Well, not 20, but there's a lot of games in this collection. So if you like Yu-Gi-Oh!, this could be something really cool. Number 84, Hollow Knight Silk Song. Back with another 2D action side-scroller, Hollow Knight Silk Song is actually surprisingly good for Japanese language learners. There's quite a lot of dialogue and story as you play through this game. This is another kind of Castlevania-ish type game that could actually be really good for someone who wants more of an action experience, having fun with the gameplay, but also having some story here and there. So you can take Hollow Knight Silk Song completely at your own pace, as it's all push to continue with Japanese text. Number 83, Yuka Replayly. Hey, now we have a modern 3D platformer. If you like Banjo-Kazooie, you'll like this game. And just like Banjo-Kazooie, this is push to continue with Japanese text. So you can have all your 3D platformer fun and learn some Japanese here and there with all of the characters that you come along that have Japanese dialogue. This game you can completely take at your own pace, giving it a passing score of C. Number 82, Tomba Special Edition. Oh, I'm so glad these games made the list. Tomba Special Edition are re-releases, kind of, also a little bit remastered, of the PS1 classic Tomba, or Tombi, depending on your region. I grew up playing these games. I love these games. There is Japanese text, push to continue, but just no voice acting. Although there are some moments where there is voice acting. There's like a couple of cutscenes in the game, but not really anything you can learn with. These games are great. I love Tomba so much. Super nice, cute, comfy Japanese learning experience, right? You just have some NPCs that you talk to, they give you a kind of mission, you need to find some items, go explore, do some things. A very light game for Japanese language learners. Very accessible with push to continue. Tomba gets a C. Number 81, Renzu. Next we have a push to continue adventure game that has Japanese text. That is a bit more of a darker setting. It does have a log, although as there's no Japanese voice acting, it's not incredibly useful. This game is around about 6 or 7 hours long, which has a pretty decent presentation, but it's definitely an expensive game. The price is pretty high up for what it is. Perhaps something you'd wait for on sale, but there is a demo version available so you can try it out and see if this is something you're interested in. Number 80, Recall Empty Wishes. So here we have another indie adventure game that's got a bit of a horror theme to it. This game's actually probably pretty good for someone's first game playing Japanese, as there's not too much difficult dialogue. Most of the game is dialogue as you're kind of, exploring and solving puzzles and things like that. But the dialogue is actually pretty simple. I didn't see too much difficult language. It's pretty stock standard, not really too advanced. Obviously not baby language or anything like that, but definitely quite approachable for someone for like a first game. The font is very readable and it's completely accessible for a language learner, with everything being pushed to continue. So Recall Empty Wishes gets a C. Number 79, Lunar Silver Star Story. Next up we have one of our first full JRPG games. This is a re-release, a kind of a remaster of the PS1 games. These have push to continue with Japanese text, and there is some Japanese voice acting in the cutscenes in the game, but there's not too many of them. But sometimes you get some Japanese voice acting you get to listen to. The font is pretty readable, especially compared to the PS1 version, and I would say the language overall is actually quite low level. When I flip through the story, most things that I see is actually pretty low level language. It's not too dark of a game, it's not too adult of a game, it gives a very approachable first RPG type vibes. So Lunar Silver Story gets a passing grade of C. Number 78, Hello Kitty Island Adventure. Speaking of beginner-friendly games, Hello Kitty Island Adventure has Japanese text and push to continue, and I would say this is another really great game for beginners. Super cute, super comfy, it's kind of like Animal Crossing without the furigana. But I actually think this game is easier than Animal Crossing because there isn't all that honorific speech that's used by some of the villagers in Animal Crossing, and not so much slang as well either, as most characters seem to speak in just very standard casual Japanese, making this game a great first game for a Japanese language learner, especially if you want a cute, fun environment in a kind of Animal Crossing setting without too difficult Japanese. This is a very safe game to say that if there's some language in this game that you don't know, you probably should. It's all pretty commonly used language. Number 77, Hades 2. Oh, what a cool game. So Hades 2, as well as Hades 1, but this is released in 2025, has push to continue with Japanese text, but unfortunately there's no Japanese voice acting. I believe this game does have English voice acting though, so you could listen to the English and read the Japanese and kind of help you along the way. This game actually has a surprising amount of story and dialogue, making it actually pretty decent for a Japanese language learner. It's also a really great game. So Hades 2 gets a passing score here at number 78. Number 76, Deltarune. Here we go. So if you enjoyed Undertale, this is the next game made by the creator Toby Fox, Deltarune. So this is an indie RPG that has push to continue with Japanese text. And this is a tricky one, as sometimes the characters speak in hiragana only, which can be a positive and negative, depending on your level or what you would like in a Japanese game, and some characters do use kanji. The font is also a little bit non-standard, so it may be difficult for some people, but maybe not. But certainly an interesting and useful game for Japanese language learners, which might be accessible for beginners if you're willing to play a hiragana only game, although I do recommend just playing games with kanji, as it makes your life so much easier when there's kanji to actually see exactly what they're referring to. I'm looking at you, early Pokemon games. But still, a great game for Japanese language learners. Deltarune gets a C. Also, there's a demo available, so if you want to try out the game yourself, you can right away. Number 75, Saga Frontier 2 Remaster. So another classic JRPG released on modern systems, Saga Frontier 2 Remastered has Japanese text and push to continue. There's no voice acting, but it is a big JRPG that you can take and enjoy at your own pace. I will say, however, though, that the font is a little bit tricky for Japanese language learners, so just be careful about that. Number 74, Super Robot Wars Y. Awesome, here we have the next entry into the Super Robot Wars series. Super Robot Wars Y has push to continue with Japanese text, and there are sometimes Japanese voice acting, although it appears to be only in the battle sections. So as the character kind of charges and fights someone, they might say a couple of lines of dialogue. But it's mostly just a push to continue game. And this game has a ton of story, as it's kind of a mash of all these different mech worlds coming together. So you have characters all throughout mech or mecha history kind of interacting and having a story together. Definitely a lot of reading. So as this game does have a little tiny bit of Japanese voice acting, this is our first C+ game. Number 73, Urban Myth Dissolution Center. This is a really cool one. So Urban Myth Dissolution Center has Japanese text, push to continue, no Japanese voice actor or anything like that, but a really cool art style. I really quite like this kind of pixel art style, and it's an adventure mystery solving game. But there's actually parts in the game where you get to interact with Japanese because you have to kind of form sentences, which is really unique and interesting. To solve the mystery, you need to form the sentences sometimes, so it's kind of a little bit more interactive than any of the games we've previously seen with the actual language itself. This game does also have a log, but as it doesn't have Japanese voice acting, it's not all that useful. But a really cool game here at the C+ tier. Number 72, Suikoden 1 and 2 HD Remaster. Oh man, what can I say? Suikoden 1 and 2 are some of my favorite JRPGs of all time. I grew up playing these games, loved how they're connected together. Just an awesome experience. And they've now been re-released in HD, so you can now play this game on modern consoles. There is a log available, but as there is no voice acting, it's just push to continue Japanese text. The log isn't necessarily that useful. But two incredibly awesome games, all in one collection. Highly recommend playing these two games. And this is a really good example of a game that I personally would love to actually play to learn Japanese with, like for one of my first couple of games, for example. For me personally, it was Final Fantasy VII and Final Fantasy VIII, but something like this could totally be someone's first game if they really loved Suikoden 1 and 2. So just because this is at the C+ tier doesn't mean that I'm saying that every game above it I necessarily recommend more to play, but it really depends on your interests and what tools you would like available. But Suikoden 1 and 2 are 100% push to continue with Japanese text, with a log bumping it up a little bit, giving it a C+. Number 71, Detective Instinct, Farewell My Beloved. What a cool game this is. So this is pretty much the Famicom Detective series games if you just removed the voice acting and I guess the furigana for some of the earlier ones. That being said though, the gameplay is very similar, and this is an incredible game for Japanese language learners. Super cool. I love the art style, love the vibes. I'm a big fan of the detective genre. I think it's a little bit better than visual novels, but detective genre, very cool if you're into that kind of stuff. A really good one for Japanese language learners because not only do you need to kind of read to understand what's going on with the story, but you also need to interrogate people, ask questions, investigate things. It's a nice kind of interactive visual novel if you want to look at it that way. I'm a big fan of this genre and think it's pretty useful for a Japanese language learner, with Detective Instinct being a little bit more of a bare bones version of Famicom Detective series here at the C+. Number 70, B tier visual novels. Okay, so now starting off the B tier with the B tier visual novels. These are visual novels that are push to continue, and they often have some combination of voice acting or a log, but maybe not both at the same time. Or maybe not much voice acting. So some of the visual novels that are in the B tier, released in 2025, are Furaiki 5. This is actually a really cool game for Japanese immersion. I actually made a video on this game if you want to check it out. I'll put a link in the description or maybe a little pop-up here. It's kind of a road trip game. It's mostly push to continue without voice acting, but there are sections that have voice acting when you talk with some of the characters in the game, but it's mostly non-voice acted, but with some bits here and there. Matchup, which is push to continue and has some voice acting, but the log you can't replay the audio. This game does, however, have a demo available. Dreamy Syrup, also push to continue with a little bit of voice acting and a log, but you can't replay the audio. Lover's Kiss Endless Memories, which has push to continue voice acting and pausable cutscenes, and then a whole bunch more visual novels that either don't have much voice acting or don't have replayable audio. This being this Entagram game with a title that's far too long to say, Ever 17, The Out of Infinity, Fate Hollow Ataraxia Remastered, Furaiki 1, Fuyuzono Sacrifice, Kaleidoscope of Phantom Prison 2, Memories of Soso, Mystery Story, Nagi no Koi, Toki no Kizuna, Itareri Tsukuseri, Iroha ni Hoheto, and Kenka Bancho Otome Double Pack. All of these visual novels are all pretty decent for a Japanese language learner, but they're not as good as the visual novels that we'll see that are in the A tier, which we'll see a little bit later. Number 69, Metroid Prime 4 Beyond. This was a tricky one to rank. So Metroid Prime 4 was just released. There are sections of the game that are pushed to continue that have furigana. However, I must say the font is quite difficult to read. I would rank this game lower, but the fact that it does have a lot of push to continue in furigana makes it kind of difficult to put in the C tier. So it's definitely a B-. I could even put it in the C tier because it's a little bit difficult. There is voice acting, but unfortunately it's not in Japanese. They only did English voice acting. So So this is a B- tier game, but I would almost put it in a almost C-D tier for kind of difficult to recommend. That being said though, there is plenty of dialogue that has furigana if you manage to be able to read the font, making it a pretty useful game for learning Japanese if you really like this game. Number 68, Hyrule Warriors Age of Imprisonment. Okay, this is another tricky to rank game, so I'm going to give this game a B-. This is also a difficult to use game to learn Japanese with, but because it has these really good features, it gives it a bit more of a higher score. So Hyrule Warriors Age of Imprisonment has furigana all over the place, voice acting all over the place, but it's not really push to continue. Most of the dialogue just kind of happens as you're playing. Throughout all of the gameplay section, characters will say things, and you can read what they've said in the log, but it doesn't appear to have replayable audio. If it does, I would bump it up a little bit more, because at least you can replay that audio. This does make all of that language completely accessible though, as you can read the log and it has furigana, so that's really good. And then the other part of the game is mostly cutscenes, which have voice acting with furigana. But I don't believe those cutscenes are pausable. I may be wrong, and if I am, this game deserves to be a higher tier, but I don't believe it has pausable cutscenes, at least having the text being visible. You can, however, replay the scenes because they're just missions, so you can just redo the missions, so this is a really tricky one. This is probably the hardest one in the video to give a rank, because some of the things are uncertain. However, even if those things were true, I still think this is a difficult game for learning Japanese with, as there isn't any push to continue segments in the game, so everything relies on either you pressing pause or looking back up in the log that only appears to be during the battle scenes. I don't think it's available during the cutscenes. So this one's a difficult one to rank, but might be usable if you're interested in Dynasty Warriors games. However, we're going to have a much better Dynasty Warriors game coming up a little bit later. Number 67, Cotton Reboot, High Tension. This next game is a very interesting entry. Here we have a 2D side-scroller shooter that actually has a whole bunch of story that is both push to continue and voice acted. So you can actually take the story at your own pace, making it a pretty decent learning experience. You can have some fun playing a 2D side-scroller, get Japanese listening practice, and also take the Japanese at your own pace when you want to look things up. One thing I would recommend, however, is to go into the sound settings and turn up the voice sound a little bit higher than the BGM, as sometimes that background music can actually overwhelm the dialogue a bit. That's actually my recommendation for most games in general, is to turn down the BGM a little bit and then turn the voice up as much as you can. Number 66, Triggerheart Excelia Enhanced. So this next entry I pretty much give a tie with the previous game, Cotton Reboot. This is now a 2D shoot 'em up game. Instead of side-scrolling, you're now vertical scrolling, with a whole bunch of visual novel sections in the game that have push to continue and Japanese voice acting, making it a relatively interesting learning experience that's not too heavy. Both of these games are only like an hour or so long, so they're not a huge commitment if you want to try playing a game in Japanese. Number 65, Gao Guardians, Servants of the Dark. So this next game that gets a B- score is Gao Guardians, and this is now a kind of Castlevania style game that does have a little bit of push to continue with voice acting. I will say, however, there isn't that much dialogue on the game, and it's probably comparable to the previous two games that we just saw as well. However, I personally enjoy this game a bit more. There is also a demo version available, so you can try it out yourself. It's actually pretty fun to play. Number 64, Space Cobra: The Awakening. Oh, what an awesome game this is. So this is a 2D, 3D side-scroller game that's a retelling of the classic anime Space Cobra. So cool vibes, fun gameplay, push to continue, and voice acting. There are also cutscenes that have Japanese voice acting. I'm not 100% sure if you can pause those cutscenes, but just given the amount of quality push to continue dialogue that's voice acted in this game, definitely makes it a higher rank than the previous games we just saw. Such a cool game. I think if this game's cutscenes are pausable, I would actually rank this a little bit higher, maybe giving it a B tier instead of a B-, because it's a really interesting, fun time with a whole variety of different characters and stuff. It's just really cool vibes. I really like it. But for now, I'm giving it a B-. Number 63, Xenoblade X Definitive Edition. Xenoblade X Definitive Edition is an awesome game that is definitely decent for Japanese language learners. It has push to continue with certain NPCs when you go up and talk to them. The cutscenes have Japanese voice acting, and you can pause the cutscenes. So you can take it at your own pace as long as you manage to press the pause button either before the dialogue happens or before it ends. Unfortunately, the push to continue sections aren't voice acted, but I definitely couldn't put this game in like a D or C tier, so that's why I'm putting it in the B-. It could be a great learning experience, but it could be a bit difficult as well to use. Number 62, Toa and the Guardians of the Sacred Tree. Okay, so now moving on to the B tier, Toa and the Guardians of the Sacred Tree is an action-adventure game that has push to continue and Japanese voice acting. So on paper, it definitely deserves to be in the B tier. That being said though, this game definitely has a lot of gameplay, so in those sections you're not really going to be doing any learning. Sometimes characters might say things, but you can't really learn with that because it just kind of flies by. But when you do engage with the main story, it's very nice having those sections push to continue with voice acting. So Toa and the Guardians of the Sacred Tree is a B tier. Toa and the Guardians of the Sacred Tree does actually have a demo, so if you want to try it out yourself, you can do that right now. Number 61, Fuga Melodies of Steel 3. Fuga Melodies of Steel 3 is a strategy game that has push to continue, some voice acting, it's definitely not fully voice acted. There is a log, but unfortunately you can't replay the audio, but you can take the game mostly at your own pace, so that's definitely a useful game for Japanese language learners. And there's a demo available right now if you want to try this game out yourself. So Fuga Melodies of Steel 3 is a B tier. Number 60, Magical Princess. So this next game, Magical Princess, is a parent simulator where you raise your daughter, and depending on your actions, there are different outcomes. Your daughter might grow up in different ways, and there's like 50 endings or something. This game has push to continue, Japanese voice acting, and a log, but unfortunately no replayable audio. So we're definitely now starting to get into the games that have push to continue and voice acting being the standard. This game's pretty accessible for a Japanese language learner, and there is also a demo available, so you can try it out right now. The full game hasn't yet released in 2025, so it may come out in 2026. But the demo has released, so you can try that out right now. Number 59, Shinobi Art of Vengeance. Oh man, what a cool game this is. So this is a 2D action side-scroller. So fun to play. I almost couldn't put this game down. I was having so much fun. Great gameplay, and the story is push to continue with voice acting. So both the story and when you engage with characters has push to continue in voice acting. The dialogue can be pretty spaced out at times, with being quite a bit at the beginning, kind of setting up the story, but then more bit by bit as you play the game. So this game is definitely for someone who wants to have a little bit more fun just playing a game, but then getting rewarded by making it through certain levels, by having some Japanese you get to listen to while you enjoy the story, and then take the Japanese at your own pace, as it's pushed to continue. This game also has a demo available, so you can try it out right now if you want to check out Shinobi Art of Vengeance. Number 58, Tokimeki Memorial, Forever With You. Next up, we have the classic dating sim Tokimeki Memorial. Tokimeki Memorial is definitely one of the most famous dating sims. The original version was actually worked on by Hideo Kojima, who made Metal Gear Solid. This game has push to continue. The girls are all voice acted, but the main character isn't. But there isn't unfortunately any log, so you can't go back and replay it. This is definitely a B tier game for Japanese language learners. It's definitely a great one for Japanese language learners. There's no real negatives, nothing holding it back. If you're into dating sims, this game could be a great choice. Also, I feel like the level of the language is really quite simple, as you're not going to really be coming across too much non-real life language. None of the girls are going to suddenly talk about any kind of difficult political drama or anything like that. So that actually makes this game pretty approachable for beginners or intermediate Japanese language learners. Especially the girls' dialogue would be quite easy to look up because you can just listen to what they say and then try and remember what they said, look it up, you can just type it in. But the main character's dialogue might be a little bit trickier for you to actually look up. You may need to try and handwrite the kanji or use OCR or something like that. That's why Tokimeki Memorial is a B tier game. It's a pretty decent game for playing in Japanese. Number 57. Ariana and the Elder Codex. Another great action side-scroller, Ariana and the Elder Codex is another really good one if you want to enjoy the gameplay but also get rewarded with some Japanese here and there. There is actually quite a bit of story in this game, being both push to continue with Japanese voice acting, and there's even a log. But the downside is that the game's not fully voice acted. There are sections in the game where there's no voice acting at all. It's just the special character interactions where you have kind of a visual novel style with the character portraits. Only those sections are voice acted. But you can take the whole thing at your own pace, and having a log is really great. So Ariana and the Elder Codex gets a B. Number 56, Roommates, Romance, and Ringing Hearts. This is an interesting one for Japanese language learners. This is pretty much just a branching story movie, but I was actually having quite a bit of fun playing it, so I'm definitely going to put it here at the B tier. It's quite funny and silly. Roommates, Romance, and Ringing Hearts doesn't have any push to continue, so you would think it should be quite low, but it is completely 100% voice acted, as it's like a movie. And you can pause the cutscene at any time and it's instant. There's no like change in overlay or anything like that. It's just like pressing spacebar are on a video. It's just instantly paused, which is really nice because it means that you get that instant reaction. You're very likely to be able to actually pause things in time. And as this game does have branching paths, there are sections where you can make decisions and things turn out a different way. And so then you can replay the scenes. You can kind of, if you like, you could just keep playing the scenes over and over again. So while it doesn't have a log with replayable audio, it does have replayable scenes. And personally, as I was playing the demo, I found the experience pretty fun and enjoyable, as long as you're okay pressing pause whenever the dialogue appears. It's pretty silly, so it kind of rewards your hard work breaking down the sentences for then something silly to happen, and sometimes cringe, but it's kind of lighthearted, and I feel like it nicely balances out the learning experience without getting too visual novel-y. As I said, there is a demo version available, so you can try it out right now and see if this is something you enjoy. Number 55, Metal Gear Solid Delta Snake Eater. Oh man, what an awesome game. This is the remaster of Metal Gear Solid 3, one of the best games of all time. This game is completely voice acted and there is so much story and dialogue. And that is the one thing keeping this up in the B tier, because the rest of it is quite a difficult experience for a learner. But come on man, it's Metal Gear Solid 3, this is incredible. And one really good thing about this remaster is that everything is now approachable for a Japanese language learner. Both the cutscenes and the codec calls can be paused. Not skipped, you don't have to, well you can, but you don't have to press the skip button that kind of cancels the audio line so you can take it at your own pace. That's how you had to do it in the past. But these remasters give you a pause button, so you can just instantly pause any cutscene or the codec without making the audio stop playing completely, and then when you come back it's just gone. Now you can actually stop it and then the audio will keep playing after you press pause again, making all of the dialogue in the game approachable. The downside though is that you do have to press pause a lot, and kind of, you see something new, you have to quickly press pause. You might sometimes miss the pronunciation of words in the beginning, or you can wait until the end, but then you have a chance you're not going to actually press pause in time and you won't be able to actually study the sentence. So I probably recommend pressing the pause button as soon as you see text. It is a difficult one to use for Japanese language learners, but I could not live with myself if I put it any lower than a B tier. So Metal Gear Solid Delta Snake Eater gets a B. Number 54, Super Mario Galaxy 1 and 2. Yay! Finally we have both Super Mario Galaxy 1 and 2 available on the Switch, so you can now play both of the games. They've both been re-released with a little bit more HD textures. These games are actually pretty good for Japanese language learners, full push to continue, and furigana. So this is the first game on the list that you pretty much don't even need to have like a dictionary or any kind of tool beside you to help look things up. Everything is readable without needing to use any sort of OCR thanks to having furigana. So this is the first completely accessible game for a Japanese language learner on this list. That being said though, it is a little bit more gameplay heavy, but it's got to be one of the most funnest games on the list as well, and there is actually quite a surprising amount of dialogue, especially considering you get 2 games here. And in each game there's actually quite a bit of dialogue, more than the previous action games that we saw on the list. The font might be a little bit tricky, but it's not that bad. I think you can get used to it pretty quickly. This is definitely one of those games that as you explore each area, you kind of make sure that you talk to every NPC, get as much Japanese learning as you can, and then just guilt-free enjoy playing a really fun game. A very accessible game for Japanese language learners, push to continue, full furigana. Super Mario Galaxy 1 and 2 is the first B+ game. I would rank these games even higher if there was more dialogue, but for now they'll have to comfortably live at the B+. Number 53, Magical Craft Cat and Witch. Now we're moving into some great games for learning that have furigana. Magical Craft Cat and Witch is a simulator dressmaker game in a very cute, lovely village with a lot of very approachable language and kind of a weird mix actually. Sometimes kanji aren't used and it's written in hiragana only, and then sometimes there are high-level kanji used and then they have furigana. So it's kind of a weird mix, but this game is completely take at your own pace. And it's a very comfy game for learning Japanese with. You're not going to see too much far out language that you're not going to see in like real life, as the game is set in real life. It's a very cute and cozy game where you interact with cats. Number 52, Model Debut 4, Nicola. So next up in the list in the B+ tier is Model Debut 4, and this is a fashion game that has quite a lot of dialogue that you can read through. with push to continue and furigana. The level of the language is definitely a little bit higher than the previous game that we saw, Magical Craft Cat and Witch, but as it has full furigana, that makes it completely accessible for a Japanese language learner. If you're into fashion and you want to learn some Japanese, this could be a great game for you. Dress up your character the way you like, and get a whole bunch of visual novel style interactions and dialogue with furigana. Number 51, Donkey Kong Bonanza. Yay, Donkey Kong Bonanza! I was so happy when this game was released. I am a huge Donkey Kong Country fan. That game is literally a part of my DNA. Some of my core childhood memories is playing Donkey Kong Country 1, 2, and 3 over and over and over again. I used to go to my cousin's house just to play the game. We'd play it together with 2-player, I love Donkey Kong Country. I want Donkey Kong Country 4 so much. I really want to see a return of the classic Donkey Kong Country with all the Kremlins and King K. Rool and all that kind of stuff, and the soundtrack done by David Wise. This, however, is the return to the 3D format, which didn't start off so well for Donkey Kong, with Donkey Kong 64 pretty much killing Donkey Kong. Finally returning with push to continue and furigana, yay! But that font is really, really tough. I think this game may have the hardest font on this list. I myself, when making my video for Donkey Kong Bonanza, had a tough time reading this font. If you personally can read the font fine, no problem, congratulations. I've been learning Japanese for over 10 years and almost every dialogue box makes me kind of trip up over myself. I think this is something you really gotta get used to, and then maybe after you're used to the font, it might get a little bit better, but I see that as a pretty big hurdle. If it wasn't for that font, this game would get a much higher rating with full furigana everywhere, except for maybe the pop-up dialogues that happen sometimes. There's even sometimes Japanese voice acting with one of the main character's sidekicks, making it a pretty decent game for Japanese language learners, just that font is keeping the score down. There is also a demo available, so if you want to check it out, you can try it out right now. Number 50, Groove Coaster Future Performers. Groove Coaster is the first and I think only music game on this list. Great to see a game like that you can learn Japanese with. I had a lot of fun playing the demo, there is a demo available, and there are sections of the story that is push to continue with Japanese voice acting. And I believe all of the story is push to continue with Japanese voice acting. So you get a whole bunch of fun with the musical game, and then you get some Japanese learning with the story. There's not too much story though. This is so hard to get everything the exact right ranking. It's already hard enough putting it in the tier list, but let alone ranking it all accurately as possible 1 to 100. It's pretty tough. But I feel like this is probably a bit easier to use for a Japanese language learner because the audio and the text is really clear and readable. It's debatable. Number 49, Farland Saga 1 and 2 Saturn Tribute. Oh man, what a cool release this is. So for number 49, here we have the re-releases of these two classic games of Farland Saga. This is pretty awesome. These are strategy games with full push to continue and what appears to be full voice acting? What? Why could they do this in the Saturn era and not now? Everything's voice acted, at least everything that I can see. So already that makes it an incredible learning experience. But what's more, they've added a rewind function. So you can actually rewind the gameplay because it is a strategy game, so if you want to kind of fix mistakes you might make, but you can also use that for the dialogue. So that makes this push to continue voice acted and replayable audio. I actually could probably put this game in the A tier, but I feel like the audio is a little bit tricky to hear as it is an older game, so I just feel it's a bit safer to put this in the B+. But this is a really good game. Surprise! My mind was blown when I came across this. Really good game for learning Japanese with, if you want to have some fun with some retro strategy. Awesome. Number 48, Bravely Default Flying Fairy Remaster. Nice, so the next B+ game is one of the first full JRPG games that is push to continue with voice acting. Now the whole thing isn't voice acted, but there is quite a lot with the story, and all of the interactions that you have is push to continue, so you can take all of that at your own pace. There isn't a log or anything, so you can't replay the audio, but this is a big game with a lot of learning that you could do with. Definitely will be a little bit more challenging though, as this is a fantasy game, so you're going to see a little bit more archaic speech, some strange sounding characters, and some high level vocab. Number 47, Final Fantasy Tactics, The Ivalice Chronicles. Yes, more of this, please. Here we have a re-release, remaster, not remake, of Final Fantasy Tactics. We have full push to continue and amazing voice acting. One of the best strategy games ever you can now enjoy with full Japanese voice acting. Amazing. Please do this for all of the classics. I want every single classic game with full voice acting like this. Final Fantasy VII, Final Fantasy VIII, Suikoden, come on, release them all. Breath of Fire 4, I would love it if we see more games like this. This is awesome. So not only do you get one of the best games on the list, but it's full Japanese voice acting. Unfortunately, there's no log or anything like that, so it does have to stay in the B+ tier. And the language is definitely tricky as it is fantasy and olden day. It's going to be a tough one for Japanese language learners for sure, but quite accessible being pushed to continue with Japanese voice acting. Final Fantasy Tactics Remaster gets a B+. Number 46, Yakuza Kiwami 1 and 2. Here we have the first of the Yakuza games on this list. Well, I guess technically the Pirates in Hawaii was also a Yakuza game, but a bit different. Yakuza Kiwami 1 and 2 are remasters of Yakuza 1 and 2 that have a whole bunch of Japanese voice acting. There are sections that are pushed to continue, although those sections aren't usually voice acted. There's no log or anything, but you can pause the cutscenes, so you can take everything at your own pace. And the scenes are also replayable, so in the main menu of the game, all of the cutscenes that you come across, you can replay as much as you want. So the Yakuza games could definitely be great for a Japanese language learner, although a little bit rough speech sometimes, and with some of the Yakuza slang, it definitely makes it a bit tricky, and then you have polite speech on top of it, so overall you're going to get exposed to a whole bunch of different Japanese. This does make it a bit more difficult for a Japanese language learner, but it is completely accessible. I just wish that it was completely voice acted, that would be perfect. Actually, I think one of them was completely voice acted. Was it Yakuza 6? I can't remember. Let me know in the comments down below. I think one of them was actually fully voice acted. But since then, unfortunately, they stopped doing that. Number 45, Yakuza 0 Director's Cut. So the next Yakuza game on the list, this has the exact same ranking as the previous game, but now this is the Director's Cut re-release of Yakuza 0. Not entirely sure why this game is necessary, as Yakuza 0 was already a really great looking game, but I think they added some extra stuff and kind of spiced things up here and there, so this counts both for just Yakuza 0 and Yakuza 0 Director's Cut. This game also has push to continue, Japanese voice acting, although the voice acting is in the cutscene parts and not in the push to continue parts. You can pause the cutscenes, and all of the cutscenes can be replayed in the main menu. This is a fantastic game, set in Japan, all around, really great for a Japanese language learner, but just be careful, it's not going to be beginner friendly, because you're going to have so much Japanese thrown at you, you're going to have levels of slang, like not just casual Japanese, but Yakuza slang casual Japanese, and then aggressive Japanese. It's going to be a tricky one, but you're going to get exposed to a whole variety of Japanese, so if that's what you want, these games could be great. Number 44, Tales of Xillia Remastered. Almost finished with the B+ games, we have the second to last B+ game, Tales of Xillia Remastered. Excellent one for Japanese language learners, there's so much Japanese voice acting, push to continue. Some of the cutscenes are push to continue as well, but you can also pause the cutscenes. An excellent RPG if you're wanting to play something in Japanese, quite accessible for a Japanese language learner, and overall a really fun time. Number 43, Tales of Grace's F Remastered. Everything I just said about Tales of Xillia, but I think it's just a little bit better, at least personally. I don't know, maybe it's just me personally, but I like the font a little bit more. Feel like it's a little bit easier to read with the full color backgrounds. Definitely easier to OCR, more accurate. But Tales of Grace's F definitely ties with Tales of Xillia. Two great remasters released in 2025 here at the B+ tier, with push to continue, voice acting, and pausable cutscenes. Number 42, Calamity Angels Special Delivery. So the first game in the A- is Calamity Angels, and this is actually really good for Japanese language learners with a few negatives. So Calamity Angels has push to continue, Japanese voice acting, and a log with replayable audio. But it's not fully voice acted, and that font is a little bit tricky. Also, the gameplay itself is, I don't know. I definitely couldn't justify putting this game in the B tier, so it's definitely the first of the A-. On paper, a pretty accessible game for learning Japanese with. Number 41, Azure Striker Gunvolt Trilogy Enhanced. I love this series. I think this series is awesome. Very much a revival of Mega Man energy, but with a whole bunch of other cool stuff going on. Interesting gameplay. And unlike Mega Man, although some of the Mega Man games do have it, this game is push to continue with Japanese voice acting. Pretty much all of it is voice acted and push to continue. And at least the third game in this trilogy does have a log so you can replay the audio as you play the game. I'm not sure about the first two though, but the third one definitely does. There's also a whole bunch of extras, as this is very much like a stage game. You can replay the scenes. There's even some interactions in the menu where you can kind of chat with the characters, so there's a whole bunch of Japanese there to learn, not just in the game's story. And there's even included some previously Japan exclusive CD dramas, so there's quite a bit of Japanese to learn here, quite a bit of gameplay to enjoy, and at least for the third game there's a log with replayable audio, making this game definitely deserve an A-. Number 40, Solo Leveling Arise Overdrive. Here we have one of our first real big action games. This has push to continue with Japanese voice acting that does seem to have a log. I'm unsure if you can pause the cutscenes, so that might be a bit tricky. That might lower the score if you can't. This is a really tricky one to place because presentation alone is awesome. So pretty. I love the manga style sections that appear to be pushed to continue with Japanese voice acting. There are definitely sections of the game where there's not going to be much voice acting and it's just going to be gameplay and action, so it's kind of tough to say this is like a super recommended game. But there are sections of the game where it is voice acted and pushed to continue, definitely, so that looks amazing. And it does seem to have a log, so this game looks really good. Also, it's not a terrible price here at $49, or at least 4,900 yen, at least compared to some of the games that are like $80, $90. So this definitely looks like an interesting one to kind of keep your eye on, maybe try out sometime. I wasn't able to play this game myself, so I can't say for definitive proof whether or not it has these things, but from my research I was able to find what I just said, so it looks pretty cool. Looks very interesting. Also, maybe difficult? Hard to say. It's hard to give this any lower of a score though, so Solo Leveling Arise Overdrive gets an A-. Number 39, the 100-line Last Defense Academy. This game is awesome. I actually made a video on this game if you want to check that out. I'll also leave a link in the description. The 100-line Last Defense Academy is kind of like an adventure strategy game with a lot of Dangan romper visual novel style elements. This game has a crazy amount of dialogue to read. Push to continue. There is voice acting, although definitely not the whole game because there's just so much dialogue, there's no way it could all be voice acted. There is a log, however, that you can replay the audio, but unfortunately you can't pause the cutscenes. So there's quite a few things holding this game back, so it definitely needs to be an A-. Awesome game though, and there is a demo available, so you can check it out yourself and see what you think. And you can also check the video that I made on it. I think this is probably one of the first big adventure games with just so much text that actually makes the price point worth it. Some of the games we saw previously, the price was insane. I didn't mention it, but I have been including the price up here in the corner so you can see how much each game is, and some of those kind of earlier indie games, like $70, $80, insane. Definitely not worth the price, I think. But this game is actually worth the price because of just how much learning there is. It really is like a novel. Number 38, Natsume's Book of Friends, Hazuki no Shirushi. Oh man, the vibes on this are awesome. This is like a Boku no Natsuyasumi Crayon Shinshan setting, Japanese countryside, inaka living, yokai interacting, awesome visual novel. This one definitely has to be separate from all the others. Natsume's Book of Friends is push to continue with Japanese voice acting. It's not fully voice acted though, just keep that in mind. It also has a log. Setting wise, this game is S tier. This is awesome. You're literally in Japan, you're in the countryside, all the benefits of Boku no Natsuyasumi games, but in a visual novel format. How awesome. I'm a really big fan of this game. This would probably be one of the few visual novels on this list that I actually personally would want to play. I'm not too familiar with the story. I don't know whether it's my thing or not, but the setting really is. One thing to mention though is that the voice acting does reduce a lot as you progress through the game. I was going through someone's Let's Play and just kind of skimming through. If you want to do that yourself, I highly recommend putting the game title and then write Jikkyo or Jikkyo Nashi, or even just katakana Sutori, and that can often help you get a really nice look at what a game is like in Japanese. So I went through this game, hours and hours of gameplay, and it definitely reduces in voice acting later on in the game, which is unfortunate, but not uncommon. Number 37, Kimetsu no Yaiba, The Hinokami Chronicles 2. Oh man, talk about another hard to place game. This one could definitely be S tier, but I gotta say it's S tier with some difficulties, and that's why it's here at the A-. But oh my god, this looks awesome for a Japanese language learner, if you're willing to put up with some of the negatives. So just like the first game, this is the second game, there's 2 of them, so if you like this, you have another one just like it. This game has Japanese voice acting absolutely everywhere, furigana absolutely everywhere. Sometimes there's push to continue in the story scenes when you're exploring, so that part is both push to continue, furigana, and voice acting. There's no log or anything like that, but you can take some of the cutscenes at your own pace, and you can pause the battles, so anytime during your battle, you can pause and read what they're saying. You can also replay the scenes, as it does follow a kind of stage kind of setting that you can kind of choose the sections and you kind of unlock memories and you can replay them over and over again. So like, this game could be an S tier game, but the fact that it's just a little bit tricky, you gotta press pause sometimes, it's not 100% accessible, I don't feel comfortable giving it an S tier, even though it could be an S tier for someone. Oh my god. But I think also the general level of the language should put it down a little bit because, you know, we've got some crazy words that are definitely not going to appear anywhere except for in this game. So Kimetsu no Yaiba, the second game, here is in the A-, but it could definitely be someone's S tier for sure, especially if you like Kimetsu no Yaiba. I will say, however, that some of the cutscenes you can't pause. There are particular ones that you can't pause, but you can replay them, so it's still somewhat accessible. Number 36, Atelier Yumiya, the Alchemist of Memories and the Envisioned Land. Oh man, another game that could be an S tier, but unfortunately there was some design decisions in this game that holds it back. So Atelier Yumiya is mostly push to continue, Japanese voice acting, and technically it has a log, although it has unpausable cutscenes. And when I say technically, it was weird when I was playing it. So the beginning of the game, for some reason, you just can't access the log any point during the cutscenes or the gameplay, so it's like it doesn't exist. Then after a certain point, now suddenly the log is available, but only during certain cutscenes, and you can't access the log just randomly as you're playing the game. So when characters are talking out in the field, you can't use the log to replay what they said or just to read and take at your own pace what they said. So like, it's so close to being an S tier game, but it has these flaws that I almost wonder whether it deserves to be an A-, because I think it's going to be quite a difficult game for learning at times, but then at other times it's perfect, exactly what you want. So it's really tricky. That's why I put it here at the A-, because I don't quite think it deserves to be in a B tier. It's an A with flaws. Really cool game though. Number 35, Octopath Traveler 0. Now we're getting into my kind of jam. I love Team Asano. Anything they make is just perfect. Triangle Strategy is one of my favorite games of all time. Octopath Traveler 2 is one of the greatest RPGs of all time. And here we have Octopath Traveler 0. This is a little bit different. It has a little bit more like town building elements and things like that. Octopath Traveler 0, however, still has all the great things about Octopath Traveler 2 that is good for Japanese language learners. This game is completely push to continue. It's a traditional RPG. There is Japanese voice acting, and the main core scenes of the game you can replay at any point, so you can just go into your menu and replay those scenes. However, it doesn't have a log, so you can't replay the audio on any scene or on any interaction, but for these special story scenes you can, technically, because you can just keep replaying it. So this is a tricky one. It's definitely a great game for Japanese language learners because it has push to continue voice acting and replayable sections. If it had a log, that would just be icing on the cake, perfection. Unfortunately it doesn't, so here it's in the A-. Number 34, all of the A-tier visual novels. Okay, so here I've combined all of the A-tier visual novels that were released in 2025. There's a lot. These visual novels have push to continue, mostly voice acting, and a log with replayable audio. It's exactly what you want as a Japanese language learner. The only way really to make them better would be to either have furigana, 100% voice acted, and I guess a game that is interesting to you. For me personally, I have a tough time with visual novels. I want to love the genre, but there's just not too many in my particular tastes. I personally would love if they just remade like all seinen or shonen manga and just made them in visual novels. I loved Buddy Mission Bond. I loved Famicom Detective Club. I think I want a little bit more darker settings like Berserk or something. Unfortunately, that doesn't seem to be the target audience for most visual novels, but there are actually some visual novels that I have included on this list separate from this because I actually think they're really, really cool. So here we have 30 A-tier visual novels released in 2025. So all of these games pretty much have these features: push to continue, not 100% voice acting, but a log with replayable audio. So it's close to 100% accessible, just those non-voice acted parts are a little bit less accessible for a Japanese language learner. So starting from the top, we have Super Detective Sherlock-chan, Setsuna ni Kakeru Koi no Hanabi, Road 59, A Yakuza's Last Stand, Virtual Girl at World's End, Ayakashi Gohan, Despera Drops, Mononoke Chigiri, Momo's Revitalization Project, Byakko, Sidekicks Beyond, Orampia Soare, Catharsis, Sophia in Exchange for Lies, 9 RIP Sequel, Kamitsubaki City Under Construction, Regenerate, A Tithe in Blood, Air, Clother Reset, Harmonic Reflections, Kanade, Never Seven the End of Infinity, Okayu Noom, Over Requiems, Panic Palette, Seifuku Kanojo 2.5, Shinobi Samurai, Sonohi no Kemono ni Tayutama It's Happy Days, the Kare Kano Trial Operation Timeless Heartbeat, the Town of Nier Iro Musubi, and Tearblade. All of this is getting added to my huge mega tier list, so if you want to take your time and read all the information, what features are available for each game, feel free to check out the spreadsheet that I'm going to link in the description. Number 33, Venus Vacation Prism, Dead or Alive Extreme. Dead or Alive photo visual novel game. That's pretty much the easiest summary of this game. You have pretty girls in scantily clad outfits that you can take photos of and learn Japanese all at the same time. This game does have push to continue, voice acting, and it has a log with replayable audio, definitely making it an A-tier game. You can even replay the scenes as well. I would put this as a tie with all the visual novels that was just previously mentioned, but it's just a little bit different from a visual novel. Also, it is mostly voice acted. There's not as much non-voice acted parts as some of the visual novels. So if you want to take photos of pretty girls and learn Japanese, Venus Vacation Prism might be the game for you. Number 32, Yggdrasil Kingdom. This is an interesting one. So this is kind of a mix between mech and visual novel. So it's a little bit more interesting than just dialogue. There is a bit of gameplay, but it's still very much a visual novel game. And just like all the visual novels, this has push to continue, Japanese voice acting, and a log with replayable audio. And it even has a demo so you can check it out yourself and see if it's something that interests you. Number 31, Varlet. So Varlet is pretty much just, I hate to say it, a lower quality Persona. But as it is just like Persona, it has all the features that a good Persona game has: push to continue, Japanese voice acting, and a log with replayable audio. I don't mean to beat it up or anything, I'm sorry. If you like this game, that's great, but you gotta admit it. It really is just like Persona. You have a ton of character dialogue that is voice acted, push to continue, and you have RPG style battles. It's set in a school, and given that it's priced at a whole $10 more than Persona 3 Reload, yeah. Great for Japanese language learners though. Number 30, Beyblade X Evo Battle. So this Beyblade game has full push to continue and full furigana. There's no Japanese voice acting, but because it has full furigana, it makes it completely accessible for a Japanese language learner. And here we have a little bit of a point of contention here. Whether something like Varlet should be ranked higher than this really depends on your personal tastes and needs. Varlet, on one hand, has push to continue, voice acting, and a log so you can replay the voice acting. That should be way better. But this game has full furigana, meaning that everything is accessible. You don't need to look anything up with OCR for anything that isn't voice acted. So it does make it more accessible for a Japanese language learner. Does that make it better for a Japanese language learner? That's debatable and probably not the case, but the fact that it is more accessible, I'm going to have to put this at a slightly high ranking. So just keep that in mind, that the difference between whether a game is fully furigana or voice acting and push to continue, which one wins out really depends on the individual. In fact, I actually asked you guys with a YouTube poll, and just under 60% of people voted for voice acting or push to continue is more important than furigana at 41%. And I tend to agree with that, but if a game is full furigana, that means there's absolutely everything can be accessible for the language learner. If a game's not fully voice acted, those parts that aren't voice acted are not accessible. And that's why I've put it slightly lower. But personally, I would prefer a game voice acted and push to continue. Number 29, Starbites. What an awesome looking game this is. Technically not a 2025 release as it's going to be released in 2026, but there is a demo available, so I'm including it in this video because technically it is something playable that was released in 2025. Starbytes has push to continue, voice acting, a log with replayable audio, but there is one downside: you can't pause the cutscenes. But you can still use the log to study it later, so it's still accessible. Awesome looking mech game. I really like the look of this. I think this is going to be a great one next year. Definitely well and truly deserving to be here in the A tier. There is also a demo available, so you can try it out yourself and see if you like it. Number 28, Sumiko Gurashi, create a wonderful Sumiko Island. Here we have a very cute and comfy Animal Crossing style game where you talk to cute creatures, build your island, do quests and gather and things like that. Very similar to Animal Crossing. This game has push to continue, full furigana even in the menus, and sometimes in the menus when they don't use furigana they go into hiragana instead, making it 100% accessible. However, there's no voice acting. Definitely a really cute game that could be a fantastic one for beginners, as the language isn't too archaic or high level or honorific or anything too difficult, so it's just a really cute, approachable, fun time. So if you're a beginner looking for a really cute, comfy game to get you started, this could be it. Number 27, The Quintessential Princesses, Fantasy, the Abyss, and the Magic Academy. So here we have what is described as a Doki Doki Dungeon RPG. The Quintessential Princesses is a very colorful game for learning Japanese with that has push to continue, voice acting everywhere almost full, and a log with replayable audio, making this game a great game for learners of Japanese. And if you want, there's a demo available so you can try it out yourself right now. Number 26, To Heart. Now we have To Heart, and this is a full 3D remake of the classic game, I believe released in 1999, and this is kind of a combination of all of the A-tier visual novels and Doki Doki Memorial, so it definitely deserves to be a higher tier than all of those games. This game is push to continue, mostly voice acted. Even the guys are voice acted, so that's something that really sets it apart from a lot of visual novels. And there's a log with replayable audio, and it has a demo so you can check it out yourself right now. Also, to be honest, the price is really good. It's like 30 bucks or 3,000 yen, which is probably more like 15 bucks or 20 bucks. And at least personally, I find this a lot more engaging than just a flat visual novel with kind of static characters. Having it 3D in a moving world makes it a lot more visually interesting for me, so personally I would choose this over most of the other visual novels, even if the setting isn't necessarily my cup of tea. If you're looking for a light-hearted, cute romantic comedy that is completely accessible for a Japanese language learner, relatively low-level language, and you want to try it out for free, this could definitely be the game for you. Number 25, Magical Girl Witch Trials. As far as A-tier visual novels go, this game really stands out as an excellent choice, and that's why it definitely deserves to be treated separately from the other visual novels that I mentioned. Magical Girl Witch Trials, which I believe even has the voice actor for Freezer in it seems, is a very well-received visual novel with push to continue, voice acting, a lot of voice acting, and logs with replayable audio. And apparently the story is really good, apparently the script is really good, everyone seems very happy with this game, so this could be a really good visual novel. Personally, I really quite like the art style. I think it's a lot more interesting than some of the others. The story looks like it's really good. So Magical Girl Witch Trials is definitely an A-tier game for learning Japanese with. And there's a demo, so you can try it out yourself. Number 24, Phantom Brave, The Lost Hero. Next up, Phantom Brave is a kind of mix between a strategy game and a visual novel. It has push to continue, Japanese voice acting, and a log with replayable audio. It is mostly voice acted, and there are sections of the game that aren't voice acted, like menu text and stuff like that, so technically this could be a lower score than the previous game we just saw, but it really depends on your tastes whether you want an actual video game or a visual novel. I think we can kind of look at it as a tie. That being said though, the price is definitely not a tie, so if you are trying to be economical, maybe not the best game right now learning Japanese with unless you find it on a sale. But it's very cute, very colorful, you can take everything at your own pace, and there's a demo available. Number 23, Shinepost, Be Your Idol. Speaking of wanting visual novels to be a little bit more than just the kind of static character background text, here we have a kind of visual novel idol manager game, Shinepost, Be Your Idol. This this game I think is a little bit more deserving of its price point, although still quite expensive. Signpost Be Your Idol is very much like a visual novel, but much more engaging, and there's even some music time if you want and you can read along. So Signpost Be Your Idol has push to continue, voice acting, and a log with replayable audio. Definitely looks like a very interesting, colourful game that has a little bit more happening than just a normal visual novel. Number 22, Eden's Zero. This was another tricky one to rank. Eden's Zero has push to continue, Japanese voice acting. Most of the game is voice acted, but there are certain dialogues that aren't voice acted, but a lot of it is. And there's a log with replayable audio. Sounds great, close to perfect, but unfortunately the cutscenes are not pausable, and there's no log during cutscenes or battles. So this is a tricky one to place. You could put this lower because there are situations where it's not so accessible, but there is so much voice acting, so much that you can actually use as a language learner, and it's actually a game. so it's tricky. It has a demo as well. That's pretty good, right? So it's tricky. I like the visuals. So personally, I feel like I would be more inclined personally to play this game than some of the previous games of similar position. And that's why I've put it higher on the tier list. But it definitely has its flaws. The price as well being another flaw. Number 21. Is it wrong to try and pick up girls in a dungeon? Familiar myth, Fulland of Water and Light. Holy moly, what a title! And what a game, actually. It's pretty useful for Japanese language learners. This is a combination of an anime visual novel, but also a kind of side-scroller action game, kind of. But the real reason this game is so high up is it is push to continue, it has a log with replayable audio, it is Japanese, fully voice acted. I haven't finished the whole game myself, but I have scoured through hours and hours and hours and hours of gameplay on YouTube, and everything is voice acted that I can find, absolutely everything. And it has a log with replayable audio, making it perfect for a Japanese language learner. In terms of just the story alone, if you cut out the gameplay, this game seems to have about 4.5 hours of constant dialogue and story. I really like the concept, I really like the presentation, price point isn't too bad. I would love it if there were more games like this, if we had a little bit more action games mixed with visual novels rather than just full-on novel, but I guess that's me. I like a bit more action. So the fact that this game appears to be 100% voice acted with a log makes this game technically better than a game that has full furigana. As you get to replay it over and over, you don't have to rely on furigana and you can test your ear. Perfect. Number 20, Atelier Ryza Secret Trilogy. Okay, now we're really getting into the good games. Every game from here on, I personally highly recommend. Even the ones I'm not necessarily a fan of the genre. All of these games are just truly awesome for Japanese language learners. First up, we have the Trilogy Pack for the Atelier Ryza games. So 3 games in one. This game would be insane if you played it all. We have push to continue, Japanese voice acting, and logs with replayable audio. And I personally believe these games are way more accessible than the previous Atelier game that we saw. I believe it was Atelier Yumiya. Incredibly accessible for a Japanese language learner. If you wanted to play some Atelier games and learn Japanese with, I would definitely say these are an incredible choice. Also, there's not too many true cutscenes, as a lot of the game is just these push to continue sections. Another big reason why this game is so highly ranked. It really feels like this game is mostly accessible. Obviously, it's not completely voice acted. A game like this can't really be 100% voice acted, so that is one potential negative. But the story is definitely accessible and definitely a great one for a Japanese language learner. Number 19, Atelier Resleriana, the Red Alchemist and the White Guardian. So here we have, I believe, the newest Atelier game, and this definitely has the same score as the previous trilogy. Think of this as an equal scoring, so all 4 games get an equal scoring. This next Atelier game obviously has push to continue, Japanese voice acting, and a log with replayable audio with not too many cutscenes, making this a highly accessible game for Japanese language learners. My god, I can't imagine how much Japanese you would learn if you played all 4. Number 18, Sora no Kiseki, the First. Awesome game, awesome features for a Japanese language learner, push to continue, voice acting, and a log. Most of these are going to have these features from here on. A really incredible game for Japanese language learners, and something I really like about this is that even like the dialogue that appears when you're like running around on the field, that also has a log, so you can go into the menu at any time and you don't miss out on anything. And just like the Atelier series, it's not completely voice acted. You couldn't possibly have this game be completely voice acted, and there are large sections without voice acting. So this is tricky because you want to judge a game as a whole, what the whole learning experience is going to be. Everything's completely accessible, but those non-voiced sections could be a real big hurdle for Japanese language learners. So if you're a beginner, I would probably recommend something that has either everything voice acted or full furigana, just to get over that hurdle of difficulty, because having to look things up by yourself is quite difficult. But this game is completely accessible with all of these great features, so it definitely deserves to be an A tier. And you can also pause the cutscenes, and there's a demo available so you can play the game right now. Number 17, Seed So Lullaby. Oh man, what a cool game. Or I guess visual novel movie is what you should call it. Seed So Lullaby is a visual novel movie that has full push to continue, almost 100% Japanese voice acting. There are some sections where there's not, but it's mostly Japanese voice acted, and a log with replayable audio. Not only that, but you can also rewind back to previous sections of the game if you want, and you can just start playing from that point. So you can kind of, very much like a movie, go to any point you want. Although I don't think you can fast forward past anything you haven't seen yet. It pretty much is just a still picture movie, but it's really accessible for a Japanese language learner, making it incredible. And it's also definitely the winner of the Best Game on a Budget award for this video, as this game is only 2,700 yen. What even is that in US dollars? That's like 20 bucks? 15 bucks? $10? No, it can't be $10. Very cheap though. Yes, you could argue that it's just a movie and it just auto pauses at every section, but the fact that you can replay the audio very easily makes it much more accessible than trying to do it yourself with something like Netflix. This is technically a re-release, as it was released on PC in 2024, but on Nintendo Switch it was released this year. So Seed So Lullaby gets a well-deserved A tier for Japanese language learners. And there's a demo so you can play it right now. Number 16, Dark Auction. Now this is my kind of visual novel adventure game. Man, this looks awesome. Dark Auction is a mystery adventure that's made by quite an all-star cast. The script and the scenario is written by Rika Suzuki, who worked on Another Code and Hotel Dusk Room 215. It also has character designs by the author of Gangster, music by the Monster Hunter composer, and directed and produced by the director of Death Come True, Death March Club, and Yuru Kill. It also has some really big name voice actors, so this is the kind of effort and quality that I would want in a game like this. Dark Auction has push to continue, Japanese voice acting, and a log with replayable audio, and a demo so you can try it out right now and see how awesome it is yourself. This is technically a 2026 release, but as there's a demo available, I'm including it in this video because it is awesome. And the full game's coming out at the end of January, so we don't have to wait too soon for the whole game to come out. So perhaps by the time you've actually finished the demo working your way through it all, you might be ready for the full game release. A really cool game for Japanese language learners who like more mystery, like myself. Number 15, Raido Remastered. Whoa, where did this game come from? I completely missed this from the PS2 era. What a cool game. If you're a fan of the Persona series, but you kind of wish it was a little bit more darker, a little bit more action-y, and a little bit more Shin Megami Tensei kind of design, well, Raido Remastered is the perfect game for you. What an awesome game. Set in the 1930s in Japan, with a very kind of supernatural dark theme to it. This is 100% my kind of vibe of game. Oh, the gameplay is so fun, like the action, I love playing this game. This has push to continue, a boasted full voice acting, at least that's what it says on their Steam page, and that's what it appears to be when I go through gameplay footage on YouTube. It seems to be full voice acted, surely it can't be, and it has a log with replayable audio, so it's completely take at your own pace, so much voice acting, and just an awesome game. Like really fun to play, like genuinely. I actually really like the battle system. I'm kind of starting to think maybe I'm not so much of a turn-based RPG fan anymore. Like I grew up thinking that was the best, and I really wish Final Fantasy would return back to those roots, but I really enjoyed Final Fantasy 16 and I'm really enjoying Raido Remastered, so maybe I'm becoming an action RPG fan. Also, this game does have pausable cutscenes and there's a demo available so you can try it out right now and see how awesome it is. The price point also doesn't seem too bad, but it does seem to be around about a 14 to 15 hour game, so it is a little bit on the short side. Number 14, Persona 3 Reload. Now for a game that's definitely not on the short side, Persona 3 Reload, although technically a re-release. It was released in February 2024, but released on the Switch 2 in October 2025, so I'm just gonna sneak this in here. Persona 3 Reload is just peak gaming. Fantastic game, fantastic characters, fantastic story, fantastic for Japanese language learners. I love Persona 3 Reload so much. I really need to play more of this so I can get more footage for the channel. This game is push to continue, insanely voice acted for like a 90-hour game. Obviously it's not completely fully voice acted, but in this remaster, the team actually recorded a whole bunch of extra lines. So I think like a whole bunch of like side stories or like character stories are actually now voiced when they previously weren't voiced in the PS2 version. And it has logs with replayable audio, making it just incredible for a Japanese language learner. Obviously, if it was 100% voice acted, that would make it truly impressive, but I don't think that's possible for a game of this scale. This is probably one of the biggest games on the list, so if you're wanting to learn Japanese, you're wanting to really sink into something, this is a fantastic game to choose. I really like the setting, I really like the characters. Personally, I think this is probably one of the best Persona games, with a demo available and a somewhat decent price point. Oh, can I really say that? I feel like I have that prisoner syndrome being surrounded by so many more expensive games, but considering how big this game is, this is probably one of the first that I would actually pay this price for and not wait for on a sale. Persona 3 Reload is an awesome, awesome game. And an awesome, awesome game for Japanese language learners. Number 13, Shuten Order. Wow, what a game we have here. So this is a tricky one to rank. I'm going to put this as very much like an even scoring with Persona 3 Reload and Raido Remastered that we saw before. This game has push to continue, mostly fully Japanese voice acting. There is sections that don't have it, and a log with replayable audio. So just like the last two games, incredibly good for Japanese language learners. Very visually stimulating, very colorful, very good music. And kind of an interesting twist on this adventure style of game, Shuten Order actually has 5 different styles of games within it. There's a mystery adventure with puzzles, there's a stealth action horror, a multi-perspective visual novel, a romance adventure, and even an escape adventure. This is a really cool, varied, and interesting game for Japanese language learners. It could be a little bit hectic with all of the different scenarios and different things going on, but it definitely has the features that are useful for a Japanese language learner. So Shuten Order gets an A. Number 12, Rune Factory, Guardians of Azuma. So this is a cool entry. So here we have a Rune Factory game that's kind of set in a Japanese environment. So if you ever wanted to play like a Rune Factory set in Japan, this could be the game for you. This has push to continue, Japanese voice acting, and a log with replayable audio. It's not fully voice acted, so there are parts that may be slightly inaccessible that you may have to look things up by hand, and the language might be a little bit difficult at times as it is set both in Japan, a little bit more fantasy, and I guess a little bit more farm life, so maybe a little bit more challenging for learners, so definitely not a completely beginner game, but definitely a very accessible game for someone who's a little bit more higher level. Rune Factory Guardians of Azuma definitely deserves an A tier. Number 11, Digimon Time Strangers. Hell yes, this game is awesome. Digimon Time Strangers has push to continue, voice acting, although not fully, but it does have a log with replayable audio, making it a very good game for Japanese language learners. The main story seems to be completely voiced, the cutscenes are pausable so you can take them at your own pace, and there's a demo available so you can check it out yourself and see what you think. I think this is the best Digimon game for learning Japanese with, although maybe there was that earlier one really long time ago that was fully voice acted, push to continue on PS1. I think that was Digimon Adventure or something. But this is obviously a really, really good modern game. This is the best modern Digimon game. There you go. Absolutely fantastic for a Japanese language learner. And I just want to kind of clarify that I consider Digimon Time Strangers, Rune Factory, Shuten Order, Persona 3, and Raido Remastered all to be the exact same tier placement, the exact same ranking. But as we're doing a top 100, I can't do that. They all have the exact same pros and cons. Push to continue, great. Voice acting, great but not full voice acting, and logs with replayable audio with accessible cutscenes. So all of these games are incredible for a Japanese language learner, just not perfect. Number 10, Fantasy Life I, The Girl Who Steals Time. Now moving on to the A+ tier games, and Fantasy Life I actually also made a video on this if you want to check that out. I'll also put a link in the description. This game is absolutely perfect for a Japanese language learner. It has push to continue, full furigana, so even the menus have furigana. Furigana is everywhere. but there's no Japanese voice acting, and I do feel like one negative is that because the game stretches across so many different play styles and so many different things, like you have different classes, different cooking and fishing and dealing stuff with your house and all kinds of stuff, the amount of vocab in this game is enormous because there's so much variety of language, but it is completely accessible thanks to all the furigana. So even if you're a complete beginner, although the language itself will be quite overwhelming, the experience shouldn't be because you can look anything up really, really, really easily. Obviously, it'd be better if it was Japanese voice acted as well, but I think a game that has complete full furigana deserves to be at a higher tier because it is truly 100% accessible. Not only that, but it's a great game, really fun, very easy to sink a lot of time in. I think personally, if I had to choose between this or an Animal Crossing, I would more lean towards something like this because I do like a little bit more action, a little bit more adventure. Something like Dragon Quest Builders I really enjoyed. Definitely a really fun game that's way too easy to spend too much time in. There's even story dialogue based on the professions, it's crazy. Number 9, Pokemon Legends ZA. And so of course Pokemon Legends ZA makes it into the top 10. This game has pushed to continue full furigana, although I guess there is some parts where there isn't furigana, like when you just see a random NPC have a speech bubble above their head, but all the language you're going to worry about has full furigana. The Pokedex has furigana, the gameplay has furigana, the story has furigana. Just unfortunately no voice acting or anything like that. Please, Game Freak, please make the next gen Pokemon game have voice acting, I beg of you. It's time. But anyway, this game's really, really good, really, really accessible, very adorable and fun to play, although I do personally kind of prefer the turn-based strategy, but still, really good game. An incredibly accessible game for a Japanese language learner, and I would say the overall level of the language isn't too high. But it is a bit of a mixed bag, right? Pokemon can sometimes have a little bit of casual Japanese that may completely trip up a complete beginner. The Pokedex can sometimes be a bit tricky with a lot of the descriptive language. Sometimes the casual Japanese can be a little bit of a challenge for a complete beginner, but I would say it's still got to be a good beginner game just because of the fact that it's Pokemon. The sentences are quite spaced friendly, you never get this huge wall of text. It is aimed at kids, so you don't expect too high level language and difficult things, and it's super accessible and cute and fun, and you can just easily play so many hours of this game, which is a great thing when you're wanting to learn Japanese. You want to enjoy the experience, you don't want to find yourself hating the game or hating playing the game, you really want to enjoy yourself so you can keep going and keep looking forward to the next thing, and Pokemon Legends ZA definitely has that, giving it an A+ score. Number 8, Nekopara After. It pains me to say, but this game is incredible for Japanese language learners. We have pushed to continue Japanese voice acting, along with replayable audio, and not only that, but you can display 2 languages, yes, 2 languages at the same time. So you can display both English and Japanese, Japanese and English, and although the subtitles aren't going to 100% line up all the time because they don't usually do literal translations, still it can be quite useful in many different ways for a Japanese learner, especially if you're wanting to kind of ease your way in without going full 100% Japanese all at once. So yes, Nekopara makes the top 10. Number 7, Arcana Famiglia. And now we have the highest tier of visual novel. Not only is it visually impressive and interesting and not static, looks like a cool manga, that's exactly what I want. It is pushed to continue, fully voice acted. I don't think there is any Japanese that's not voice acted. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I've been scouring gameplay footage, I can't find any. It looks to be 100% voice acted and logged with replayable audio. Ding ding ding, we have a perfect game. A very cool looking visual novel. Number 6, No Sleep for Kaname Datte from AI The Somnium Files. Yay, another game that's very much my vibe. Here we have the next game from the AI Somnium Files series. This is the 3rd game. If you haven't played any of these games, they're very much like an ADV adventure game mixed with some visual novel elements. There's a lot of kind of dialogue between characters, but there's a lot of puzzles that you need to solve and mysteries to unravel. Really fantastic for Japanese language learners. This game has pushed to continue, so close to 100% full voice acted. There is like just a tiny bits here and there without, not really worth mentioning. I would say fully voice acted, and it has a log with replayable audio. What more do you want? It's perfect. Cool setting, fantastic music. This is a visual novel for people who aren't really into visual novels. So awesome. It's actually pretty decently priced as well, and bonus, if you enjoy this, there are 2 more games to enjoy. Number 5, Dusk Index Gion. So here we have what I believe to be the very best visual novel released this year, although not technically released this year, sorry. It is releasing in January next year, but the demo was released this year, so let's make it count, because this is a really cool visual novel. I think this deserves a perfect score. Cool art, not your typical visual novel, push to continue, fully voice acted. Even the kind of inner monologue is also voice acted. So at least at this present time, as of the demo, everything is voice acted. So not only the dialogue is voice acted, but so are the thoughts. That's really rare. And that's exactly what you want to make a visual novel perfect. You want it all to be voice acted. And with a log that makes it replayable. This now makes this superior to any game that has furigana without voice acting, in my opinion. If a game has full voice acting with logs, that makes it better than furigana, because not only can you access all the language, but you also get the listening practice. You also won't rely on furigana, so you get to test your brain with reading kanji. It's perfect. This is what you want. So although not technically released in 2025, the demo is, please let it count. You should check out the demo and see if you enjoy it yourself. Number 4. Dragon Quest 1 and 2 remakes. Okay, this is a little bit of a tricky one, but I think these games deserve an S tier. The reason why is because they are pushed to continue. There is Japanese voice acting, although not fully voice acted, but there is furigana. There isn't a log though, so that's one big negative. But is this game completely accessible for a Japanese language learner? Yes, even without a log, because it has furigana. So it's now better than a game that has furigana, but it also has voice acting sometimes. So not only is it perfect, but it's perfect plus. It has everything you need to access the language and more. So I believe Dragon Quest 1 and 2 is an S tier. The only way to make it perfect is to add more Japanese and a log. But it doesn't really have any flaws. It just could be better. Number 3. Dynasty Warriors Origins. Wait, what? A Dynasty Warriors game at number 3? It can't be. Yes, it is! This game is incredible for a Japanese language learner. There were parts in my draft stage for this video that this was actually number 1. I was starting to get worried when I was researching all the games. Oh, I can't have this game be number 1. What the? A Dynasty Warriors game? Yes! This has everything you want. This is an S+ game. Push continue? Yep, you've got it. The whole thing. Except for when you're fighting the battles. But all the story is push to continue. Furigana? You got it. Furigana on everything. Voice acting? You got it. Voice acting everywhere. Voice acting in the story. Voice acting in the gameplay. Voice acting when you're interacting with characters. The whole thing. And it has a log with replayable audio. It gets a perfect plus. It has everything you want and even more. You could technically say that there's a flaw by having furigana, but that depends on you as a learner, whether you have the self-discipline to ignore the furigana or not. There's even a demo so you can try it out yourself and see what you think, but I must say, if I had to be picky about the negatives about this game, obviously it is set in the ancient times, so the language is going to be tricky. It is definitely going to be the trickiest language, perhaps even in this entire video. So just keep that in mind. Just because it's an S+ doesn't mean I'm saying beginners run out and play Dynasty Warriors Origins unless you really want. It is going to be tough. There's going to be a lot of archaic speech like "nu." There's going to be a lot of grammar that I covered in the N2 complete video that I just made. Definitely going to be the toughest game on this list, but it's also one of the most accessible. Insane. Who would have guessed that? I guess the only thing not S tier about the game is the pricing. Also, I do want to mention that some of the cutscenes for some reason don't have furigana on really low level kanji. But then when you're playing the game, the same words have furigana, so that's a little bit odd. But it is low level kanji. If you're willing to play this game, you're probably not going to worry about that. So Dynasty Warriors Origin gets 3rd on this tier list. Not in difficulty, but in accessibility. Number 2, Story of Seasons Grand Bazaar. And so here we have the next S+ tier game, the next game in the Harvest Moon series, which is now known as Story of Seasons. Very good for a Japanese language learner. We have push to continue, voice acting, furigana, and a log. So again, beyond a perfect score, well deserving of an S+. If I were to force to say some negatives, it is that the voice acting does dry up later in the game, so it's not like 100% voice acted. If it was 100% voice acted, I'd have to give it an S++. And there isn't unfortunately any furigana in the menus for items and things like that, but they are really regular viewed things for the player, so you're going to get a lot of revision seeing it over and over again, so hopefully that's not too much of a negative. I guess technically we could demote it to an S tier because it does have negatives, but I'm going to put it as an S plus tier because it is truly a great game for Japanese language learners, and also it is beginner friendly because it is more of a casual, comfy, fun setting. This really does deserve to be placed higher than Dynasty Warriors Origins. We can't let that get a #1 score for this video. So let's bump it up a little bit because it is more beginner friendly. And it's very comfy in a learner friendly environment, right? You're not fighting and killing things, so you can really just take your time and enjoy immersing in Japanese. #1, Inazuma 11 Victory Road. And the very best game released in 2025 is the newest Inazuma 11 game made by Level 5. Of course, Level 5 was going to take the crown for this video, of course. They always make the best games for Japanese language learners. Level 5 is the GOAT, they're God tier. I am, however, only going to be giving this game an S tier, not an S+, and I'll explain why I'm still going to give it the first place regardless. So Inazuma 11 has Push to Continue, Japanese voice acting absolutely everywhere, and furigana, but no log. So this is why it gets demoted to an S tier, but why I still think it deserves #1 if I was to pick any game on this list to learn Japanese with, to have the most accessible experience. Inazuma 11 has to win. It has to. It's better than every single other game on this list for a Japanese language learner, period. Pretty much the entire game has furigana. Pretty much the entire game is voice acted, although there may be some NPCs that aren't, but so many of them are. There is so much dialogue. It's set in Japan, so you get to walk around in Japan. You get to feel like you're in Japan while you learn Japanese and immerse in Japan and Japanese. Like, how can it not be more perfect? To be honest, I could just skip the soccer parts. I don't care about that. It's the rest of the game that I love. And even the main game, like that's already by itself incredible for a Japanese language learner, but there's actually separate modes that are also really good for Japanese language learners. Even the quests are voice acted. It's also one of the most beautiful games on this list, and you can pause the cutscenes. Like, it has everything you possibly want. Yes, you could technically say you wish you could have a log, but the fact that it has furigana and voice acting and push to continue, and there's so much voice acting, there's so much furigana. Technically, I could give it an S+ tier, but the fact that it doesn't have a log, I feel like I've got to be as strict as possible, so the winner of this video, the best game released in 2025, is Inazuma 11 Victory Road. Whew, okay, so we've just gone through every single game that was released in 2025, and I mean every single game. That took so much work going through the entire Steam store, and there's some trash on the Steam store, the entire Switch store. Try going through that. You will want to just Persona 3 yourself. That is just crazy bad stuff on the Switch store. Same as the Steam store, really. And then the whole PlayStation store, going through every single game. I don't think I've missed anything. If I have, let me know, but I've been pretty rigorous going through every single game, researching every single game. So hopefully you've now seen every single game released in 2025 and you have a pretty informed idea about what games came out this year and what games might be interesting for you to help enjoy your Japanese learning journey by playing in Japanese. So thank you so much guys for watching. I hope you enjoyed this video. Hopefully you found some cool games for learning Japanese with. If you did, please make sure to leave a like, comment, and subscribe. If you want to help support the channel without actually doing anything extra, you can actually just buy games through Amazon using my affiliate link. It doesn't cost you anything extra, and about 1 or 2% of the game cost goes to the channel. So it's a nice, easy way to help support the channel as you buy some games or really anything from Amazon. You can just click on the link, and whatever you buy from Amazon, you can totally use the affiliate link, and some of the proceeds will go to the channel. So now I just want to go into some extra bonus territory. There are some extra games that didn't make it to the top 100, and I'll explain why. We have some special mention games, we have some free-to-play games, and we have re-releases that I didn't break the rules for. Alright, so starting off the special mentions, we have a couple of really unique and interesting games here. First, Suikawa Lead. This is a voice-controlled game. So you can only play this game by using your voice. So this is incredibly unique because you actually have to use your Japanese speaking ability in order to control the character. It starts things off pretty simple by just having to say things like left and right, run and stop, but the commands do progress and level up, to give yourself more power and control over your character. So this is a really interesting one. I can't think of any game I've ever seen like this. This could be a really interesting game for Japanese language learners because the overall requirement for you to be able to play this game is really low. It also kind of helps your pronunciation, as I notice sometimes if you say things a little bit too rushed or a little bit too unclear, it doesn't register the word properly. And as you're really just saying the same commands over and over again, it could be really good reinforcement for these simple pieces of vocabulary. I don't know how much learning you're going to be doing, but it's definitely an interesting one. And there's a demo available on Steam, so you can try this game out yourself and see how good your Japanese speaking is. Next up we have Chill With You, Lo-Fi Story. This is another really unique one. This is a sound novel game where you can listen to lo-fi music, ambient sounds, and different kind of environments, where you kind of have this workmate. Like as you work in real life, like as you study or as you do something, you can do it together with this character. And the longer you work together with her, the more story you get to unlock. The more conversations you have, which seem to be fully voice acted. It does seem to be AI voice acted, but it's not terrible. And there's even a timer that you can use if you want to set up yourself working on certain tasks for a certain amount of time, like doing Anki for 30 minutes or something. And then when you're finished, you're often rewarded with some sort of conversation or piece of dialogue. And even when you want to have breaks, you can click on the character and she'll say some stuff here and there, and even sometimes have interactable conversations. So again, this is a really unique game and not really something I could include in the top 100. In some aspects, it's really quite interesting and unique. There is a log so you can replay any of the special scenes, not all of the dialogue, but the certain unlockable scenes, which are kind of like chapters. The kind of scenes that you actually unlock as you kind of level up your progress with the character by working together and stuff like that. Those scenes are replayable, but all the other dialogue isn't. And I don't believe that dialogue's pushed to continue either, so it's kind of really weird. I can't really put this anywhere, whether it's a C or a D. It's a very interesting, unique study buddy, or work buddy. Definitely a very chill, vibey kind of way to get a little bit of Japanese into your life. And there's also a demo available on Steam, so you can check it out yourself right now. This next game is super interesting. We have Oshaberi Kingu. This is so interesting. The premise, I think, has so much potential for the future of gaming. This kind of stuff really excites me. This is another game that uses your microphone, but instead of now saying basic prompts like left, right, forward like the previous game we saw, this game actually tests your ad-lib verbal skills. So this tests your word power with various subjects like name as many fruits as you can, or explaining yourself, like how would you deal with certain situations, and then explain yourself in Japanese. Or even just giving you random situations and then throwing you into it and being like, okay, now pretend like you're doing that job. Like for example, okay, all of a sudden you have to be a weathercaster, go. And so like, it's really interesting and unique because what? This doesn't exist anywhere. Like, I've never seen a game that enables you to kind of force you to speak Japanese, not just the words, but also full sentences. And this game is obviously connected with AI. According to the information on the store page, it uses ChatGPT provided by OpenAI and Gemini, and also a speech recognition program. And so it both recognizes your speech, but then it also analyzes what you said. And so not only does it read when you say certain words and then it actually writes it into text into the game, but then it'll even give you a written analysis of how well you did. So it's super interesting. Definitely a fun one. I think this would be a really great one to check out if you're wanting to try and get some speaking practice, although I don't know how strict the scoring is going to be for someone who speaks very basic Japanese, but wow, what an interesting one. It says on the Steam page that there are two different modes. Test mode, which takes about 20 to 40 minutes per playthrough. Stage clear mode, which gives you a whole bunch of prompts and apparently takes about 2 hours. But as this is connected to your speaking ability, all of these things are very replayable, right? You can try and do a better job, and you can even do this together with someone as well, which is really interesting. Apparently it has a log as well, but I'm not sure how useful that is. A very unique game. Like, this really does excite me for the future, thinking about actually interacting directly with the game. Like, I think that would just be next level. This is definitely something that I'm looking forward to experiencing one day in my future. Imagine being able to play like Skyrim in Japanese, and like the only way to actually progress is by using your speaking ability, and like you actually have to talk with the NPCs in order to like go around and do things, or like a crime solving game, and the only way to actually progress is by actually asking the NPCs questions in Japanese. That is really the kind of future that this game gives me that initial glimpse of. Like, imagine the day when that's possible. That's what this makes me think of. Obviously, this game's nowhere near like that, but it really does show the potential that is really only truly possible by utilizing AI technology. So it's an interesting future we have. And here, this is a very interesting game for Japanese language learners. And the final special mention is Wagotabi, a Japanese journey. I actually made a video on this when the demo came out, but now the game is finally released in August of 2025, and this is probably the very best Japanese educational game on the market. I don't know of anything that's really better than this, and to be honest, most of the other games that are available, like on Steam and stuff like that, aren't really that great for Japanese language learners, even if they market like they are. Most of the other games really are just kind of replacements for Anki, whereas Wagotabi tries to do something a little bit more. Not only does it have those kind of test sections where you're testing this word, what does this word mean? And then trying to, do the right answer. But this game also gradually teaches you Japanese, and kind of as you slowly unlock it by exploring the world and talking with people and kind of progressing, you actually do acquire Japanese phrases, Japanese grammar, and all kinds of things. Apparently this game has progressed a lot since I made my demo video, and just looking at the Steam page right now, it does look really impressive. They seem to have footigan on absolutely everything. Apparently it's fully voiced in Japanese, so wow, okay, well, looks like I may have to check this game out again. I might have to make a video on the full version now. The current statistics is that you can learn over 300 words and grammar points and over 170 kanji. There are about 500 example sentences with apparently 2,000 voiced Japanese dialogue. Not sure how that works. Shouldn't there be as many voiced dialogue as there are sentences in the game? But definitely a fantastic game, and probably the king of Japanese educational games right now on the market. Not a single game even comes close to this for Japanese language learners as far as educational games go. Whenever the conversation comes up about someone asking me what would be the ideal game for Japanese language learners, Wagotabi actually comes really close to what I personally would make if I were to make a game for Japanese language learners. So this game is definitely a fantastic one for Japanese language learners, but I couldn't really put this on the tier score as it doesn't really have the same criteria as those other games. But definitely a game you should check out. Okay, so bonus stage. These are some games that don't really count as games released in 2025, whether because they were re-releases or a free-to-play game, which, they could just disappear at any moment, so you can't really rely on them. So I'll try and go through these very briefly. In the C tier, we have Long Gone Days. This is a push-to-continue game, and that's it. So it gets a passing score, but it is technically a re-release. Looks pretty cool. Now moving on to the B tier, we have Star Leaping Story. This has push-to-continue and some voice acting. We have Dragon Ball Sparking Zero, which has some push-to-continue and voice acting. Not sure of the pausable cutscenes though. A really cool game is World Ends Club. This is push-to-continue and voice acted. Looks really cool. Another re-release here in the B tier is Rise of the Ronin. I made a video on this game if you want to check it out. Really cool game. This sometimes has push to continue. There is a ton of voice acting, and there is a log, but you just can't replay the audio, so it's a B. Now moving on to the A tier for re-releases, we have Planetarian Snow Globe. This is a very short game though, with push to continue, voice acting, and a log, although it's not fully voice acting. Next we have Neptunia Game Maker R Evolution. This is also push to continue, voice acted, and a log. We have the Utawareru Mono Trilogy, kind of visual novel strategy games with push to continue, voice acting, and a log, although the narration isn't voice acted. We have the Hungry Lamb Traveling with push to continue, voice acting, and a log. Summer Pockets Reflection Blue, also with push to continue, half voice acted with a log, and Amanatsu, which is also push to continue, voice acted, and a log, but not fully voice acted. Another re-release is The Legend of Heroes, Trails Through Daybreak 2. This has push to continue, voice acting in the main story, although lots of non-voice acting, and a log. We have Hyper Devotion Noir Goddess Blackheart, also push to continue, mostly voice acted, and a log. Death End Request Code Z, push to continue, voice acting, and a log. Noctuary, also push to continue, voice acting, and a log. Sushi Ben, this is a cool game, push to continue, almost fully voice acted, and a log. There's also a VR version, really interesting game, that also has a demo available. Iwakura Aria, push to continue, voice acted, and a log, and a demo available. And finally, the highest tier re-release, Relayer Advanced Definitive Edition. This is an awesome game. This is like the closest I can get to enjoying this kind of visual novel. Of course, it's a visual novel mixed with a strategy game with mech and space, like it's pretty cool. Push to continue, voice acting, and a log. And this game, I believe, has full voice acting, so really, really, really good. And now moving on to the somewhat awkward feeling free-to-play games. So I have some very mixed feelings about this genre in general. I've seen so many great looking games just erased from existence. Full Metal Alchemist Mobile, Nier Reincarnation. Actually, just recently there was another one. What was that? Tribe 9. Just a crime that was deleted. What a cool looking game, and great for Japanese language learners. So I really want to preface this by saying I do not support the free-to-play system. I actually hate the free-to-play model. I wish it didn't exist. I wish all of these games just cost money to buy so you could actually have them forever and not just get deleted and wiped from existence as soon as some company just arbitrarily decides, yeah, we don't need this in the world anymore. Poof, gone. Very against this. I do not recommend any of these games, but for the games that were released in 2025, here are the free-to-play games. So we have Sword of Justice. I believe this is a Chinese MMO, which has push to continue, voice acting in the main story for Japanese, and a log with replayable audio. So it's actually pretty good for Japanese language learner, if that's your kind of thing. We have Isekai, What Title Should I Collect Next? Weird title for a game, but really cool looking game. I love the visuals. If it wasn't a free-to-play game, it would probably be in the top 100, but it's a free-to-play game. Personally, I'm not going to be making an account with any of these games to find out 100% what features are available, because if it requires an account, I'm just not going to waste any time for free-to-play games. They might be deleted by the time I sign up. But it does have Japanese text, push to continue, and voice acting, I believe. Girls Frontline 2 also looks pretty cool, but I'm not going to log in to find out what features it has. Oh, the next game is one I actually could log in without having to sign up for anything. Madoka Magica Magia Etc. Had a really rough time loading this game, but it did have push to continue, voice acted story, but the cutscenes were not pausable. And then the final B tier free-to-play game is Shadowverse Worlds Beyond. This has push to continue and voice acted mostly. This one actually seems to have a decent amount of story with pretty good music and voice acting, so the story mode of this game actually looks kind of decent. Yay. And then finally moving on to the A tier. So we have Infinity Nikki, which I wasn't able to log in because they required me to sign up, but I can confirm that has push to continue, Japanese voice acting, and a log with replayable audio. So Infinity Nikki is really, really good for a Japanese language learner if playing free-to-play games doesn't make you as angry as it does me. Also, the cutscenes appear to be pausable. And the highest rank of free-to-play games released in 2025 is Persona 5 The Phantom X. This is pretty much just a free-to-play version of Persona 5. So instead of the smooth transaction of an actual produced, released video game, you have these annoying load times and weird bugs and weird connection errors, but it's free. This one, however, is actually legitimately impressive. The fact that you could get a game that has push to continue voice acting mostly and a log, and it's pretty much like playing a worse version of Persona 5 but free, is pretty insane. Like, I don't want to support this, but this is really, really good for a Japanese language learner if you can stomach the experience. Whew, so that was a big one. Hopefully you found this list useful. I tried my best to order it, not just based on my personal preferences, and not just based on only beginner friendly. Obviously I did grade some games which were easier than similar tier games. I gave that a higher score because it does mean that it is more accessible to more people. But as there are just so many different types of learners, of so many different level ranges and stages and interests, I feel like it's most beneficial to focus on the features the games have so you know which games are the most accessible for you. And as I said earlier on in this video, there could be a game at the C tier which is, to you, a way better game than any of the games in the S tier. That's totally fine, there's nothing wrong with that. Personally, I still want to play Final Fantasy 7 and 8, and they would definitely be a C tier game because it's just push to continue. That's it. So this list isn't necessarily a list of the games that I think are awesome or a list of the games that I think you should play to play in Japanese, but more trying to give you an informed choice for what games have what features so that you can pick the right game for you, whatever level you are. I would at some stage like to make a tier list for beginners only. I think that would be really cool. Maybe we could get like a community vote of like the top 20 or so games, and then I could actually analyze the language, go through the entire games and actually analyze the text of the language itself and actually rank them in difficulty with hard data. That would be something really cool that we could do in the future. Something I would definitely be interested in doing. So what new games did you find that are interesting for you? I think personally myself, I actually found quite a few games I'm really interested in getting into. Obviously the top players place Inazuma 11. I want to play all of that game so I can use lots of footage for the channel. I think it's excellent. Dynasty Warriors Origins is pretty surprising. I think Dusk Index is awesome, the fact that the whole thing's voice acted, at least so far. Obviously Pokemon is great, Digimon Time Strangers is really good. Persona 3 is goated. Dark Auction I feel like is something I'm really looking forward to. The voice acting in that is awesome. I also can't wait to play Final Fantasy Tactics. I'm definitely going to be making a vocab episode on that sometime soon. Actually, Metal Gear Solid Delta as well. Oh, there's so many games I want to play. Not enough time, too many videos to make. But I hope you guys enjoyed the video. Thanks so much, guys, for watching. If you did, make sure to leave a like, comment, subscribe, and click that notification bell. It really does help out the channel. Every little bit helps the algorithm just a little bit more, push the video to people who want to see the video, and help as many people as they can enjoy learning Japanese. Also, if you really enjoy these videos and want to support the channel directly, you can do so either through Patreon, the Game Gengo website, where you can join as a member or even make donations. And if you join as a member, you gain access to our private Game Gengo Discord, where you can get help with your Japanese, chat with a community of like-minded people, sometimes hang out on streams and voice chat, and be a part of the really awesome community that's helping keeping this channel alive. I absolutely could not make these videos without your guys' support. I think I'm still like a quarter of the way ready if it was just on YouTube alone. So in order to go full time, I would probably need something like, I don't know, close to 1 million subscribers. Yeah, I don't think I'm ever going to be able to go full time on YouTube alone without everyone's support. So thank you so much, guys, for all of your support, whether in past, present, or future, whether big or small. We greatly appreciate all of your support. So thanks so much, guys, for watching. Hope you enjoyed the video. Hope you found some cool games for learning Japanese. And as always, I'll see you all again in the next video. Probably a whole bunch of vocab episodes. See ya.